King Baldwin IV has been getting extremely popular lately, mostly due to the re-emergence of the 2005 film Kingdom of Heaven, which follows the young Christian king as he defends the Kingdom of Jerusalem against the Muslims during the Crusade era. My most popular video on my entire channel is even about him, garnering 3.1 million views. So here are some facts that you may not know about this legendary Christian king. First fact. He was tutored by William of Tyre. You might not even know who William of Tyre is, so here's a short summary on why he was an important tutor to the young King Baldwin. William was one of the most intelligent and well-educated men during his time in Jerusalem, being educated in Jerusalem at the cathedral school in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. But not only was William educated in Jerusalem, he went abroad to schools in France and Italy, specifically the cities of Paris and Bologna, which were the two most important intellectual centers of 12th century Christendom. Liberal arts, theology, mathematics, and civil law were all subjects William learned, making him a great advisor and tutor to the young prince. Here are some quotes from William in his book, A History of Deeds Done Beyond the Sea, about how he began to tutor Baldwin and how he went about teaching him. When I was Archdeacon of Tyre, King Amalri, anxious about the education of his son, after many entreaties and under assurance of his favor, prevailed upon me to undertake the task of tutor. The boy, then about 9 years old, was accordingly committed to my care to be instructed and nurtured in liberal studies. While he was under my charge, I devoted myself to my royal pupil with vigilant care and watched over him with the solicitude befitting his exalted position. I endeavored to train him in the formation of character as well as to instruct him in the knowledge of letters. Second fact. He had leprosy. Alright, you probably already know this one, since he is literally called the Leper King. But what exactly is leprosy, and how did it affect him? Well, leprosy is an infection that can affect one's nerves, skin, eyes, and nose as the bacteria attacks the nerves, causing inability to sense touch or feel pain, which can often lead to more injuries. The infected skin can often change to become lighter, darker, reddish, dry, and have lesions. The nerve damage could also get so severe that your feet and hands become paralyzed. However, Baldwin's deadly disease wasn't actually discovered until he was around 9 years old, by his tutor, William of Tyre.
He was one of my greatest teachers. He was there when, playing with the other boys, my arm was cut. And it was he, not my father's physician, who noticed that I felt no pain. He wept when he gave my father the news that I am a leper.
The clip you just watched isn't fully true, as William of Tyre discovered he didn't feel pain, not Godfrey. But the clip from Kingdom of Heaven still demonstrates real life. William wrote in the same book I cited earlier, A History of Deeds Done Beyond the Sea, about how he noticed Baldwin's leprosy symptoms. He was playing one day with his companions of noble rank, when they began, as playful boys often do, to pinch each other's arms and hands with their nails. The other boys gave evidence of pain by their outcries, but Baldwin, although his comrades did not spare him, endured it altogether too patiently, as if he felt nothing. When I called him and began to inquire what it meant, I discovered that his right arm and hand were partially numb, so that he did not feel pinching or even biting in the least. For, as was recognized in process of time, these were the premonitory symptoms of a most serious and incurable disease which later became plainly apparent. For, as he began to reach years of maturity, it was evident that he was suffering from the terrible disease of leprosy. Day by day, his condition became worse. Act number 3. Baldwin became king at 13 years old. In June 1174, Baldwin's father, King Amalric, came down with dysentery, causing him to die on July 11th, leaving the underage Baldwin as king of Jerusalem. Despite being underage, the High Court believed Baldwin was the best candidate to be king. 4 days after his father's death, Baldwin was crowned at his coronation in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Although kings were normally crowned on Sundays, the 15th of July was the 75th anniversary of the Crusades' capture of Jerusalem, so Baldwin was crowned on that date. Since Baldwin did not reach the age of maturity, which was 15 at the time, he needed a regent to rule in his name. Miles of Plancy initially assumed that role, but shortly after, Count Raymond III of Tripoli arrived in Jerusalem and claimed the regency as he was the king's closest relative. Fact number 4. Baldwin defeated Saladin at 16 years old. You also might know this one too, since he talks about it in this scene in the movie Kingdom of Heaven.
When I was 16, I won a great victory I felt in that moment I would live to be 100. Now I know I shall not see 30.
But who exactly was Saladin, and why was this feat so incredible? Baldwin's age and illness would already make this victory impressive, but who he was up against, Saladin, is what makes it a legendary feat. Saladin at the time was one of the most powerful men in the world, being the Muslim Sultan of Egypt and Syria, controlling much of the Middle East. He came from a military family and had extensive knowledge and experience in warfare. Right after Baldwin took command of the government, he began planning an offensive of Egypt. Originally, Baldwin planned a naval attack on Egypt with the forces of Count Philip of Flanders and the Byzantine Empire, though since this didn't occur, Philip joined Raymond III in his attack on Hiram in northern Syria. This left Baldwin's forces that defended the kingdom depleted, causing Saladin to invade with an army of an estimated 20,000 men. The kingdom was in despair as they had limited troops and untested battle commanders. Nevertheless, Baldwin IV courageously left to go take on Saladin's forces with a few thousand troops, less than a quarter of his enemy's strength. Baldwin's forces made it to the fortress in Ascalon, where they met a fraction of Saladin's army that besieged them, while Saladin himself marched with the bulk of his army towards Jerusalem. However, Saladin made a critical error by allowing his larger army to disperse and plunder the rich cities on the coastal plain. While Baldwin was surrounded at Ascalon, he called on any and all to defend the Christian realm and began pursuing the Muslims along the coast. He eventually caught up to them in Montesard, while Saladin's supplies for his troops were crossing a river. Before the battle, Baldwin ordered for a cross to be raised in front of the troops as he knelt down and prayed for victory. His men, inspired and determined to win, ferociously smashed into the Muslim troops, not allowing them any time to organize defense. The young king, with leprosy, who could barely hold a sword, led his troops into battle, as his army inflicted massive casualties on the Muslims. Saladin himself barely survived the battle, as he and his army retreated. Against all odds, Baldwin IV bravely defended his kingdom, even with leprosy. Fact number 5. Baldwin had no heir. This fact might be fairly obvious, as his leprosy would prevent him from marrying and producing a child, but what were the consequences of this? Well, it meant that it was extremely important that Baldwin's sister Sibylla marry. William Longsword of Montferrat married her in 1176, but within a year, William died, leaving her pregnant. When Baldwin IV eventually died, he named her son Baldwin V as the king and Raymond as the regent. Unfortunately, Baldwin V would also die just a year after, so Sibylla herself moved quickly to claim the throne. With all this Ascension chaos, Saladin was able to take advantage of the kingdom and conquer most of it, reducing the kingdom to only a single city, Tyre. So Baldwin's leprosy that prevented him from having an heir practically destroyed the entire kingdom, as no one was strong enough to hold off Saladin. Fact number 6. Baldwin died at just 24 years old. According to my analytics, many of you watching have already surpassed this age, and might be thinking how such a young man accomplished so much with his short lifespan, while also having such a horrific disease. The Leper King was a truly generational man. Baldwin's death is actually fairly similar to another great ruler's death, Alexander the Great, who also died relatively young. But even Alexander was nearly a decade older than Baldwin when he died. So was Baldwin's death just an effect on leprosy, or was he killed by something or someone else? By 1183, Baldwin was severely disabled. He couldn't walk or use his hands, and he had gone blind. Nevertheless, he still persisted for 2 more years, leading his troops in the kingdom. However, the king then developed another fever. At first it seemed like he was going to live through this one, as he had done so twice before, but it eventually became apparent that this would be his last. Baldwin IV died by his vassals between March 1185 and the 16th of May 1185. He was buried near his father, King Almeric, in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.